Okay, so that demonstration was showing you two different versions. There's a beginner's version where the guy's really nervous, and instead of hiding his nerves and letting his heart race and for her to feel nervous and just not, everybody's just nervous all around, he gets power over it by naming it. I'm nervous. I shouldn't be, but I am, and the reason why is because he likes her. Just say it. I like you. Right? That sincerity is a big plus. Right, so that's the beginner's version. So he's got those different components there. I'm going to go into more detail later. The advanced version is where he kind of sees her in the palm of his hand. Right? And she's just there, and he's not going to hold on too tight, but she's just there, and they're just enjoying their time together. And he desires her. And it's just sort of like if a butterfly were to just start acting up and just jumping around your hand. Like, oh, that's cute. That's so cute. Right? And he can pretty much say anything, right? And be playful. And what is really driving it is his desire for her, because he sees that beautiful creature, and he's not hiding his desire either. In both cases, the power there is through the desire for her, because your love for women is your power over women, right? Okay, there are 5 components to learning the emotional activation system. The 5 components. The first thing you're going to need to do, the first component, is that you need a vocabulary of emotion terms. Okay. The second thing you're going to need, is that you need the skill of identifying and distinguishing your emotions. The third is where you express your emotions. So you identify them, you distinguish them, and then you express them. The fourth is that you're going to find that you have some inappropriate emotions. Everybody does. Nobody's perfect, especially if you're watching this. Right? So you have these inappropriate emotions. What are you going to do about them? How do you go from your current state to the ideal state? There are 3 ways. So 4A, you question the interpretation. So I'm going to explain what that means in a second. And you could either you do this with, or you can do it separately. You reframe the interpretation. And C, you condition the unconscious mind. Okay? And the fifth thing is that you then amplify the feeling of your emotions. All right, let me go through that really quickly because I see people writing. The first is a vocabulary. You need to expand your vocabulary of emotion terms, your categories and terms. The second is where you identify and distinguish the emotions. The third is where you express the emotions. The fourth is where you correct inappropriate emotions by A, questioning the interpretation, B, reframing the interpretation, C, conditioning the unconscious mind. And then number 5, you amplify the feeling of your emotions. That's a quick overview. So let's go look at number 1. So the big question we need to answer before we get started on the emotional activation system really is, what is emotion? What are emotions? This is a subject of intense debate in academia, but I'm going to take the majority stand on this. And it also happens to be true, something that works out in explaining the emotional activation system and why the rake method works. Emotion is composed of 2 parts. Emotion equals the feeling tone, or what philosophers call the phenomenology, plus the interpretation. Okay, so two components. The feeling tone plus the interpretation. So for example, if you see a snake and you feel fear, that's because you have judged that the snake is dangerous and has potential to harm you. You have judged that. You have interpreted that phenomena as being dangerous to you. Hence the feeling of fear. So the emotion is a bit more complicated than the feeling. The feeling itself is just the way it feels in your body. The emotion is a more advanced or complicated concept where you combine it with the interpretation. The way to control your emotions is through manipulating your interpretations. Right? The feelings are just our bodily reaction to the interpretations. So if you want to change your emotions, you change the interpretation. This is a really new idea, I think, for people, for the general public. The idea that you're not at the whim of your emotions, that you can control your emotions. It's a difficult thing. You know, on the way here, I was very, very late. And a lot of things were not working in our favor. And the weather was horrible. And I started to get very anxious, becoming quite angry at various things. But I realized that if you step back and think about it, you look at the interpretations. And if you think about it rationally, there's nothing you can do about it, or nothing I could do to speed up the situation. So being angry and adding further feelings to that situation will not go well, will not make the situation better. So instead, I want to replace it with good emotions. And that's where we're going to go from here. How to control your emotions. And this is something that's very pertinent for me. I mean, if the rake figure in the character comes naturally to you, that's because you are used to feeling intensely. And I'll get to that as well. And if you're feeling intensely, that is a very powerful advantage for you in life, but especially with women. Because after all, attraction and love is a feeling. And if you can feel intensely, it's going to be that much more powerful. But it can also be your biggest downfall if you're not in control of it. It's like having a nuclear weapon. It could be the most amazing weapon, or it could really backfire and Chernobyl you. Okay. Because controlling the interpretation is the way to control the emotion, it also explains how important the frame is. You might have heard this in the attraction community, the importance of frame. The frame, as the word suggests, is the lens by which you see and interpret events. Okay, that's the frame. For instance, the screening frame. When you're on a date, you don't want to be the one kissing up and hoping she likes you and everything. You want to be the one judging her, screening her. You want to say to yourself, the frame, the lens by which you interpret everything is, yeah, she's beautiful, but what else does she have? Yeah, she's gorgeous, but beauty is relatively common. On any given weekend, I can find beautiful women. What else does she have going for her? Because my standards are higher. That's the screening frame. And it's a very powerful and effective frame. Why? Because whatever comes through that lens is interpreted based on that judgment. Another one is the she wants me frame. Right? And this is very, very effective and something that in the moment I recommend to everyone. And this is what the rake has as his hallmark belief. She wants me. So she wants you so the rake believes that if she's turning towards him, she wants him. Even if she's turning away, she wants him because she's playing hard to get. Right? If she says, here, take my number, she wants him. But if she says, no, I don't want to give you my number, she still wants him, she's just playing hard to get. It's always interpreted through that frame. Whereas if you had loser frame, that is, I am a loser, then if she turns away, it's because you're a loser and she doesn't like you, so don't bother trying again. See how the frame and the interpretation creates the emotion, it also creates the result. And another one that's effective, that I might have heard before, I think it was coined by a guy named Swingcat, is the I'm the prize frame. Right? That she's got to win me over, I'm not trying to win her over. And when a date is held in that way, it comes out very differently from the I'm the pursuer and I'm going to prove everything to her frame. Right? Though that could work as well, as we're going to see. So the first step is to understand what emotions are and to realize that the control of it is through the interpretation. The second step is to identify and distinguish your emotions. Paul Ekman has traveled all around the world cataloging the universal emotions, and he's come up with 7. Well, he says there are at least 7 universal human emotions. And they're marked by the faces that you make when you feel this emotion. And no matter what culture you are in or what society you're in, the faces are the same, which is why he says they're universal. They are fear, sadness, anger, joy, surprise, contempt, and disgust. You don't have to write those down. This is just an example. Right? That right away, you have some emotion terms that most men aren't even aware of. I can't remember the last time I heard a guy say, I feel contempt. Maybe that's too, I don't know, hoity-toity a word or something. But that's a basic emotion. So what step 2, identifying and distinguishing your emotions, means is that you have to be honest in confronting your emotions. You have to be honest. Most men aren't. They think, oh, identify and distinguish, sure, good, I feel good. Okay, I got it, good. Dude, there are at least 7 basic emotions, and there are over 1,000 emotion terms that are commonly used. How many of them do you use? Once you identify the emotion, I'm going to go into this in more detail later, but once you identify it, you then need to start practicing asking yourself why you feel the emotion. You're looking for the interpretation that leads to that feeling. Right? So she says, you're too short. You feel bad. Right? That's how people talk, right? I feel bad. That made me feel bad. Well, bad is not a very descriptive emotion, is it? What exactly are you feeling? Well, maybe you're feeling insecure. Maybe you're feeling hurt. Maybe that leads to rejection, contempt of her. Maybe she's beneath you as a way of saving your ego. Ask yourself, honestly, why you felt that way. And what were the thought processes that led to that. That is the key. And it's very easy because this is all work you can do in your study room, in the comfort of your chair, armchair. This is armchair work, as philosophers like to say. You don't have to go to the gym and pump iron for months. Right? You just sit in your armchair and you think, you reflect. But it's hard for a lot of men because they're in denial. And I'll get to that later too. So that's the second step. Identify and distinguish the different emotions you're feeling. And then, when you've identified it, a part of that is naming it. You must have the right word for it. So as I've been mentioning already, increase your vocabulary for emotions. I've listed on the handout, the PowerPoint slide, 46 common emotion terms. Right? And this is especially important for non-native English speakers. Not just for expressing the emotion and for sounding like a poet or something, because honestly these are just very basic emotions. But for helping you distinguish what it is you're feeling so that you can have power over them. And then you can understand what interpretations led to those feelings. And I put them in order, of alphabetical order. Just to give you an idea of the variety of them, I'm going to go over some of these. For example, affection. And ask yourself as you're listening, by the way, when was the last time I felt this? And what did it feel like? Affection, anger, angst, annoyance, anxiety, apathy, arousal, awe, boredom, contempt, contentment, curiosity, depression, desire, despair, disappointment, disgust, dread, ecstasy, embarrassment, envy, euphoria, excitement, fear, fearlessness, frustration, gratitude, grief, guilt, happiness, hatred, hope, horror, hostility, hurt, hysteria, indifference, interest, jealousy, joy, loathing, loneliness, love, lust, misery, panic, passion, pity, pleasure, pride, rage, regret, remorse, sadness, satisfaction, shame, shock, shyness, sorrow, suffering, terror, wonder, and worry. Those are very basic, 46 very basic emotions. I could go on to read out 800 more. You notice now, just looking at 46 basic emotion terms, how emotionally stunted most men's lives are. And this is what leads researchers to conclude that most men have a much lower EQ than women. Women live in their emotions. It's part of the way that their makeup is, their biochemical makeup. Men are in denial of their emotions because, hey, it's just not manly to feel. I feel good, I feel bad, and that's about it. And that's why you don't get women. But if you have a rich emotional life, then you can convey that, right? Because what women are after all, is good feeling. They want good feelings. And good feelings, there's a variety of them. And you can give her all this huge variety and diversity of emotions, of feelings. And that becomes addictive. to hurt. Okay, so now we've looked at how the importance of thought, of your interpretation, of rational judgment actually plays, the role it plays in emotion. And here's an interesting corollary or result of increasing your emotions vocabulary is that increasing the terms and categories you use for expressing the emotions increases your knowledge of and facility over them. But always ask yourself why. Why do you have that feeling? Because this then enables you to unearth the unconscious interpretations that lead to it. Because once you understand your judgments and interpretations, then you can change your emotional expressions and your emotional responses. How do most people handle their emotions? And you can think about it yourself, like, how do you handle emotions, good or bad? In most cases, we don't need to deal with how to handle good emotions, because that feels good and you just roll with it. But how do you handle bad emotions? A lot of people handle it through three methods, three common responses. One is avoidance. And avoidance is mainly unconscious. So for instance, if they tried to approach a woman in a bar once and it didn't go so well, they didn't like that feeling, it was a bad feeling, they will avoid that situation so that they don't have to be vulnerable to feeling that anymore. Or maybe they've been in a relationship, it reached the 1-year mark, and then she dumped him. And then he got into another relationship, it comes to the 1-year mark, he gets dumped again. What happens to that guy? That guy starts avoiding the 1-year mark. Just inexplicably. He will just suddenly back out of a relationship to prevent himself from having to feel the hurt again. That's avoidance. It's mainly unconscious. The second is denial. And this is especially prevalent among those who live in traditional or conservative, moral or religious societies. Denial. No, I don't feel sexual desires towards women. I'm a morally upright person. Come on. Denial. Right? That's one of the biggest impediments to using the emotional activation system. And the third is wallowing. Okay, when you feel something bad, and then you take pity in yourself. Oh, woe is me, my life sucks, and then you wear it like a badge. Right? Like the pseudo Mother Teresa. My life sucks. You know, my life's worse than yours. That's the wallowing. All three of these methods are very bad for dealing with emotions. They're very ineffective. Instead, what you should do is when you feel these negative emotions, instead of taking one of those three methods, learn the emotional activation system and to take charge of your emotions. Okay, the third step is to identify and express them. So we've already covered identify, but I'm bringing it up again because of the human tendency to avoid and deny. So ask yourself again, what is it that I really feel? Do I really feel anger, or is it frustration? Or is it hurt? And then why? Be completely honest with yourself on why. What beliefs, judgments, or interpretations led to that feeling? That's the key. Okay, then we move on to the next step, 4A. You want to question your interpretations. So you're going to say, what are the judgments? Are they valid? I'll give you an example, right? So a common emotion that men feel when they're in the dating world is insecurity. So I get this one a lot among Asian men. I'm too skinny. I'm too skinny for her. She won't be attracted to me. Okay, so that's the interpretation. Right? So the emotion is insecurity about their skinniness. And the reason why he feels insecure about his skinniness is because he believes that he's too skinny for her to like him. Now you want to question the judgment. That's 4A. The first step, the A step, is to question the judgment. You question it like this. Is it true? Is it possible for her to be attracted to a skinny guy? Is it possible for her to be attracted to a skinny guy? And now you're going to do the research. And this is a method, obviously, that appeals to smart guys, which I assume my listener and my audience is. Right? You're smart, which means you know how to use the internet. You know how to use Google. You've been to a library, I hope. So you go and you figure this out. Do women like skinny guys? Hey, look, there are a lot of really skinny guys who women adore. Twilight just came out a little while ago, the new one, the new Twilight. And the guy that women generally judge hotter is like skinny and pale in The Vampire. Like he's really like pasty skinny. And the other guy is like the all-American, football player. But if I took just an informal poll. Most women prefer The Vampire. And in the different magazines, he's always ranked hotter, it seems to me. But yeah, it's okay if you are a buff, tanned, good-looking white dude, the werewolf. Hey, don't worry about that. Your life's okay, right? But if you're skinny, hey, in most cases, they actually like you more. What? Spend all this time in the gym for what? Who else? Orlando Bloom. Right? He's done some action movies, but he's generally the skinny elf. Right? Johnny Depp, even now, you never see him in like big buff Johnny Depp. He's always just like, average guy body Johnny Depp. I could go on and on. Skinny's not bad. Another thing is just one thing that keeps popping up. Just watch the runways. Right? The runways of the fashion shows. There was a period about 4 or 5 years when they started moving to really buff guys. Like, a lot of the colognes will always be using buff guys. But the high fashion, the haute couture, is going through, I think now it's still going through a phase of really skinny androgynous guys. Is androgynous the right word? Effeminate looking men. And there's an appeal to that. You don't have to be this huge guy. Okay, that's the research I just did for you in case you have that insecurity about your skinniness. All right, it helped you out. But you can do that for any of these insecurities. If the answer is yes, which it is for this case, is it possible for a girl, or specifically for this girl, to be attracted to a skinny guy? And if the answer is yes, then hey, you need to look at your research. Is your research sound? And believe it. Okay, that's step one. That's the rational part of it. If, however, the answer is no, then what do you do? Is it possible for her to be attracted to a skinny guy? No, let's just say, for sake of argument. What are you going to do? Then you ask the further question, is this problem fixable? Is my problem of skinniness fixable? If it is, then start fixing it. And I think that in this case it is. You need to eat a lot more protein. You need to hit the gym. You need to eat a lot more protein. Right? Take some gainers. Get a trainer. Bulk up. Stop crying. Be a man. Be a man. Let's throw that in there. Okay. If it's no, then what do? You proceed to step 2, or step B. You reframe it. You reframe the interpretation. If you can't change the situation, then you must reframe it. I'll give you an example of this. Let's say the emotion again is insecurity, right? So to make it easier for you to compare. But in this case, the judgment isn't skinniness. This guy is insecure that he's too short. He says, I'm too short for her to be attracted to me. And height is not something that you can easily change. I was told that there is surgery for this that involves nails that they drive into your knees and they elongate your bones or something like that. It's very painful and very risky. And doctors do not recommend that. So basically, it's impossible to change your height once you reach adult age. So what are you going to do about this? It's not like you can go to the gym and just get taller, right? So now you question the judgment, right? The first step is always, the first resort is A, question the judgment. Is it possible for her to be attracted to guys who are shorter than her? And in this case, it is. Yes. Right, you can, and I'm going to show you what you would do for this. But the research also shows that it's harder. The world is just harder for shorter guys. Sorry if you guys are short, just like me. I'm 5'7" or 1.7 meters. It's not short, by the way. It's like international average for adult males. But I'm fine with thinking I'm on the shorter side. And short men are actually at a disadvantage. The research has shown that the taller you are, the more money you'll make. And it shows that the men in power, presidents of countries, of universities, of corporations, tend to be taller than average. So that kind of sucks. In addition, the research has shown that women prefer men who are taller. That you'd need to have more money to compete with men who are taller. So that kind of sucks. So the research shows not that, yeah, it does show that, yeah, it's possible to date a woman, to attract a woman who's taller than you. But the research also shows that it's harder. that it's more improbable. Right? Given that, what are you going to do? You're going to reframe it. How do you reframe it? Here's one way of doing it. This is something I actually believe because it makes logical sense. The shorter the man, the stronger he must be on other variables in order to attract a taller woman. So if she's talking to me and not the guy who's much taller than me, that means that she likes me that much more. It's a belief that I firmly hold. Right? Because I'm handicapped. It's like going to the golf course. I'm handicapped, and I'm kicking your ass. And because I know that I'm at a disadvantage, I will have to compensate by being stronger in other areas. Be a man about it. I used to do Taekwondo. I did these competitions, right? And our school, Taekwondo school, was really by the book. They taught kids a lot. And I was just 14. There were a lot of kids. It was like the good kind of schools that you see in the Karate Kid, right? But there are these bad schools, you know, where the teachers like teach you how to cheat and stuff. So one of our 17 or 18-year-old black belts was fighting another like bad school, and the guy kept tripping him. In Taekwondo, it's actually illegal to sweep, and he kept sweeping him, and it didn't count. But you can sweep twice before you get a warning. You can get 2 warnings, and then it's over. So these guys always use their warnings. They'll sweep them, and it'll hurt because you fall on the ground, flat in your butt, and then you sweep again. Okay, now I'm not going to sweep anymore. Right. And there's little things like that. Or they'll go to the referee's blind side and just throw in some jabs or do something. And what our coach ended up saying, and even though I was 14, I overheard him. He was saying, look, this guy's going to play dirty. That means you have to play that much more clean. Your shots have to hit so that referee, it's not debatable. No one can say that it's, you know, you gotta score and it's got to be so clean that everybody will agree. And that's what he had to do. And that guy won because he was a man. And this is the way it is with women. Sometimes life isn't fair. Actually, all the time life is not fair. And you're dealt the cards that you have the cards that you're dealt. Deal with it. Everybody has disadvantages. Actually, being too tall is just as bad as being too short. Once you're over about 6'2", sometimes it can be a liability, especially if you go to Asia. You don't fit a lot of clothes. Just kidding. It's also just, it's a liability. Even in modeling, you can't be a runway model if you're over 6'4". If you're over 6'4", you better be a good basketball player. If you want to take advantage of your height, that is. That's what I believe, right? So I will have to compensate by being stronger in other areas. So if I'm shorter, then I'm going to be stronger. If I'm 20% shorter than the competition, I'm going to be 20% stronger. So I hit the gym and get 20% bigger. I'm going to have to be 20% smarter or more. Whatever other areas that you are able to control, you max that out. You go all the way. And that will reinforce this belief, which is the reframing, that the shorter the man, the stronger he must be on other variables. So that when she's talking to you, and she's taller, you automatically know, man, she must really like me. Yeah. And that becomes your belief. Women, and here's one more way of questioning. Women are much more attracted to personality than to physical appearance. So yeah, maybe I'm a little bit shorter, but I'm going to not just compensate, I'm going to outdo the competition on my personality. So that's the first part of it. It's the interpretation. But that's about convincing your logical mind. Right? And we all know, I mean, the whole moral of this system and this program is that the logical, rational mind is not in control. But it is still there. So if we pride ourselves on being rational creatures, and it's important for us to see the rationality in our beliefs. But now we have to condition our unconscious mind that controls the other 90, 95% to catch up to our rational decisions. Right? Yes, I believe that being short is not a disadvantage because I compensate in these other areas or I'm stronger in these other areas. But maybe the first time I think that or I decide that, I walk up to a girl who's taller than me and I'm still not, my emotions still aren't corresponding to that belief. What do? Well, C. This is the third step, C. You condition the unconscious mind. Condition it. You have to help the feeling catch up to the rational thought. There's a negative and then a positive side to it. The negative is that you cut out all the sensory stimuli that's reinforcing the false belief. Right? So if you take the false belief about height, you have to cut out the pop media, cut out the negative people, cut out all those people who are telling you, you're too short, you're too dumb, you're too skinny, you're too fat. Cut that all out. Seriously, for this period of your life, if you want to change, if you want to get results in your life, you have to minimize the time that you spend with those people. You have to minimize the time that you expose yourself to negative stimuli. And then you replace it. You fill up your senses with stimuli, reinforcing the desired belief. So for example, if you're insecure over your height, you got to cut out all the pop media negative people who are saying that short people can't get anything. And you replace it with the correct movies, the correct books, the correct posters, the correct internet images and videos, and the right people who will help support and reinforce that belief. So, for example, with the height, the way I did it was, and so just so you know, this is the height thing was something. Both of those insecurities were ones that I used to feel. So I got over the skinniness by going to the gym. I hired a trainer for 100 RMB an hour, which is like 20 Sing dollars, or at that time it was like 12 US dollars. He's now the last time I talked to him 2 years ago, he was coaching at 700 RMB an hour. But I got him at 100. Come in, get in early while you can. And he and I became really good friends, actually. But he bulked me up. I got that fixed. And in the meantime, as I was getting bigger, I was content with my progress. I also was insecure about my height. But that's something I couldn't change. So I had to do the alternative. Right? I had to reframe it. So the ways I went with that is I stopped watching all of those network or the sitcoms that made fun of short guys, like Seinfeld and Friends or whatever, those things that other people get brainwashed through. It helped that I was in China for extended periods, so I didn't have to watch that if I didn't want to. And I replaced it with, I looked for role models. I looked for guys like Tom Cruise, for instance. Right? And I watched all his movies. I continued to look for shorter role models. And I watched their movies. I read their books. I read their autobiographies. I read their biographies. I immersed myself in their lives. And then I put up images of them. This is kind of gay now, but I put up images of them. I had a vision board. I also just put them around the apartment. Right? It helped having the picture of them on the cover of the book. And then when I just did some internet research, right, and I put it as bookmarked the images and videos that sustain that belief that short men can be powerful and are powerful. Right? And then I surrounded myself with, and I was very lucky in this regard, I surrounded myself with short guys who were frickin' rich, had a lot of power, and were great with girls. And that, just looking around, it just fed that belief. So now, you know, I just think it's just a fact of life. It's like breathing air, or like saying that the earth is round. Yeah, it's true. Okay, so just to recap that part. I went over how emotion has two components. Right? It was the feeling plus the interpretation. I went over the importance of naming the emotions. I then talked about identifying and expressing